new safe Avastin puncture assist device. So we are aware that particulate matter can get into parenteral solutions and it can cause impairment of circulation, blockage of blood vessels, damage to the organs including phlebitis. These particles can be more than 50 microns or can range between 2 to 50 microns. Whenever we puncture a wire through the rubber, a coring occurs, and it's been shown that it can be as high as almost 50% of the time the rubber is punctured, versus depending on whether a blunt or a sharp needle is used. We have heard of this famous statement, Avastin does not blind people, it is people who blind people. And there the Braun made a mini spike device through which these syringes were used, and now we use this red colored needle with a 5 micron filter. But can you have a microparticle going into the solution which you are not aware of? 80% of the ophthalmologists in India still use Avastin despite the availability of biosimilars. So it is important to understand what can go wrong in your Avastin puncturing methods. What is this paper about? When we go through a rubber stopper of a vial with 26 or 30 gauge needle, do we go rubber? The answer is yes. When we use a 5 micron 18 gauge needle to remove drugs from like Razumab, Eccentric or Eylea, can we still have a coring? Yes, it will be less than 5 micron in size. Are there ways to reduce this coring? So whenever we puncture any vial, whether it's Avastin or any other vial, we can go through any of the parts of the lumen. It could be in the center or the sides. But if a coring occurs, we can have an aseptic endophthalmitis, and the cause could be actually the coring of the device. So I went ahead and made a new puncture device, which you can see there are 8 holes. There are 2 circles. The outer circle has 8 holes. The next circle has 4 holes, and there's a central hole in the center, and there is a notch on either side, N1 and N2, and there are 2 screwable handles. So this N1 and N2 coordinates with the red line on the Avastin bottle. So if I move from N1 to N2, I move the position of the holes, and that way I can get in with N1 13 punches and with N2 12 punches. So I can get 23 punches of a vial without going through the same hole every time, and that is very useful. I'll show you why that works out well. So I did this study in IIT Delhi, and we took 23, 26 and 30 gauge needles. We took bottles which were of the Avastin bottles which were cleaned with deionized water, and next we injected the deionized water into this bottles, and from there we took out with a micropipette on well plate, and these were then examined under the microscope for any particulate matter, and following that we did a scanning electron microscopy to see if we had detected any coring. This is the principle of scanning electron microscopy, by which we can actually chemically interpret what particles are there. So this is the table which shows 23 gauge needle without a pad, 23 gauge needle with a pad, 26 gauge needle with and without a pad, and similarly 30 gauge needle with or without a pad. You will see that when I'm going with the 30 gauge needle with the last table, I don't have a pointer here, with the last table with an A pad, there were no particles seen which are even less than 2 microns in size. So this clearly shows that if you use APAD with a 30 gauge needle, so this is the scanning electron microscopy images with a 26 gauge needle. Without APAD, we had particles of 8 to 10 microns. Then we had 23 gauge needle with APAD with rubber particles of 5 to 10 microns. And this is with 26 needle without APAD, 2 to 5 microns. And as we go through the 30 gauge needle, without APAD, we had a few particles, but with APAD, there were hardly any particles seen. Then we analyzed the chemical composition. We found that the rubber particles which was there in the rubber cork and the corings was exactly same, which means that the rubber corings which were detected in the deionized water were actually coming from the rubber cork. So what is the use of this particular study? It can be used with Avastin all over the country. It can also be used with any other vial like a botulinum toxin vial where corings can be made, and therefore it might be useful. And the next project for me is to use this coring, inject in animal eyes and see if they cause inflammation. Thank you.